to Retire Smart Maryland. My name is Cynthia Defazio, and I'm joined today by Prashant Sabapathi and Ozer Culhagil of Elite Income Advisors. Prashant, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for asking. Ozer, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Good. It's so good to see you both again. I can't believe a whole week has passed since our last show. I mean, time is just flying.
Yep.
It's incredible. And you've been so incredibly busy. So again, I want to thank you for always coming in and doing the shows. I know our viewers at home really appreciate that. So I want to talk today about 5 main retirement risks. And if you don't mind, Prashant, I'm going to actually reference the book because I absolutely love this book. This is amazing. Fiscal Health, Retirement Wealth. What I love specifically about this book is that it's so easy to read, it's easy to understand, and you simplify everything. But there are some risks that we should dive into.
Yeah.
So do you mind if we do that today?
Let's do it.
Ozer, what do you think?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So the first risk in retirement, this is a big one. This is kind of the elephant in the room, taxes. Prashant, why is that an issue in retirement? Big risk.
Look, I think that with the state of our national debt today and with all the uncertainties surrounding politics, and we're certainly not going to get into politics on this show, but anybody can look at what's going on in Washington, D.C. and see all the disagreement out there surrounding financial issues, national debt being one of them. I think the consensus that we find is that taxes are probably going to go up in retirement. And so how is that going to impact you? I think it's going to impact you in a couple different ways. Number one is if income tax rates, just marginal income tax rates go up, that's an issue because that means there's less income coming into your pocket. The more that you're paying out in taxes, the less net income you're going to experience. But I think another thing that a lot of people don't think of is when you get to a certain point, it's age 73 years old, there's something called the required minimum distribution. And the required minimum distribution is a forced distribution that the federal government imposes on you where you have to take money out of your pre-tax retirement accounts. By the way, you have to take that income out, that money out, whether you need it or not. So if you saved $1 million or $2 million for retirement, now you have to take an added income of $40,000, $50,000, $80,000 for the year. And guess what? When you take it out, what do you have to do?
You're going to have to pay taxes.
You got to pay taxes on every single penny. And this really creates a domino effect, which we'll talk about the tax domino in a little bit. But I think people don't do enough planning, not just for figuring out what their future tax rate might look like, but they don't have an idea of what their future taxable income will actually look like because they haven't thought enough about their required minimum distribution. It's a huge challenge and one that goes severely underplanned for retirees.
Ozer, also I should ask you, a lot of people assume they're going to pay less tax in retirement because their income's going to go down. We hear that quite a bit. Is that true or not?
Again, I'm not working for the IRS, so I cannot say if it's true or not. But the one thing that we do know when we look at our clients, most of the time, the clients is looking for an income replacement that when they are working. So when they are working, the paychecks are coming in. And one of our mentors used to say that when the paychecks start coming in, there's going to be paychecks coming in right after that. So what that means is you're going to have to replace your paychecks with something. So if that amount is what we are looking is $10,000 a month, so we're going to look to get a $10,000 a month. So if we are thinking about this, that we have to have the same income level, that I do not believe that we are going to pay less taxes. Either we're going to pay the same amount of taxes or like after 2025, we don't know what's going to happen, but we might pay a little bit more than what we are paying today.
And actually, I love what you just brought up there about recreating the same amount of income in retirement, right? And that's something we see all the time. But to your point, if our income is exactly the same, what do we lose when we get to retirement? We get to lose a lot of those deductions that we were actually capturing while we were working, right? If you're putting money into the 401k, you're taking a deduction. Well, when you're retired, that deduction stops. What if you paid off your mortgage? You were taking an interest deduction, maybe. That goes away, right? So there's all these different things that we no longer get to take advantage of. Even if we have a slightly lower or the same amount of income in retirement, it actually could mean that we're going to pay more in taxes. And then guess what? When the tax rates go up, if they go up, which we all think that they will, if they go up in the future, your same taxable income that you had is now getting taxed at a higher rate. It's a disaster.
Wow.
It's a complete disaster. You have to get out in front of this, because to your point, Oz, we have just a very limited window here where this tax code expires at the end of 2025. And a lot of people look at that and they say, well, when it expires, I'll just deal with whatever the next tax code is. I think this couldn't be more incorrect way of thinking. The way we look at it is we have an opportunity. We have a real opportunity today and for the next couple of years to proactively plan for our taxes for the future. And I'll tell you what, if you're not having that conversation, you are absolutely doing yourself and your family a huge disservice. And if your advisor is not talking about how to minimize taxes in the future, you got to question whether or not you're working with the right specialist. Doesn't mean that they're not well-intentioned, but maybe they're not the right person to help you through that next phase of your lifetime.
Prashant, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because so often you hear people say, okay, don't do taxes, go talk to someone else. And then what happens is the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is even doing. Do you find that a lot for a lot of people coming in for the very first time for their consultation, that they've had that experience?
Actually, I'm so glad you brought that up. We actually had someone come in and they said one of the reasons I didn't work with a different financial firm that they were interviewing is anytime they had to ask a tax question, they were told, well, go talk to your accountant. Well, okay, I get that, because, you know, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a CPA, but you know what? We have a CPA in our office. So now when there's a tax question that I'm not 100% sure on the answer, I'll call in the professional who's 3 offices down the hall, and she'll come in and give you the correct answer. And I think having that be streamlined, having one organization that can help you with all of the different parts of your financial planning process is so important, because it's great to have a dream team, so to speak, but if the team is not a coordinated team, it's not worth anything to you.
It's not really working when you say, hey, go talk to the CPA, but then you go to the CPA doesn't know what your financial plan is, you know, any of the stuff. So
yeah, it's a great point. So I'm glad you brought that up. It has to be a cohesive thing when you're planning for retirement.
Absolutely. Well, that was the first of the 5 retirement risks, and I want to get to the next one, but Prashant, I know that you and Ozzy have a special offer. Let's spend some time talking about what that is before we open the phones.
Yeah, we do this every single week, and it is exclusive, okay, exclusive for our television audience. You can pick up the phone. It's 833-308-5200. Have the opportunity to come in and visit with us. It's totally complimentary. No obligation, which means you leave your checkbook at home. And what you're coming in for is to get a real written retirement plan that includes an evaluation of where your income is actually going to come from. Do you have a pension in retirement? If you do have a pension, what about the survivor benefits? If you don't have a pension, do you wish that you did? How can you use your retirement portfolio to generate the type of income that you desire to live your most fulfilling life in retirement? What about taxes? If taxes go up in the future, what can you do in the next couple of years before the tax code potentially changes for you to be proactive about your tax planning? What about the market? I think the market is a huge concern for a lot of folks out there. If you've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of 2022 due to the market, it may be time to get an evaluation of a portfolio stress test, let you know exactly how much risk you're taking and what you can do to try to make your retirement portfolio a little bit more secure. If you can relate to any of those concerns, you have to pick up the phone and give us a call. It's totally complimentary, no obligation. It's 833-308-5200. We have operators standing by ready to schedule your appointment with us in Ellicott City. Alternatively, if you can't dial right now, you can always scan the QR code at the bottom of your screen or visit retiremaryland.com, where you can actually get a complimentary copy of my book, Fiscal Health, Retirement Wealth. It's your prescription for income generation, tax management, and financial peace of mind.
Perfect. Prashant, thank you so much. And Ozzy, thank you so much. And I love that prescription. That's a great way to put it. I think that's awesome. To our viewers at home, the number to call, 833-308-5200. Or like Ozzy and Prashant said, if you have your smartphone, go ahead, grab it, click on the QR code at the bottom corner of your screen. We're going to take a very short commercial break, but we're coming right back. We have 4 more big retirement risks to get through. Can you guess what they are? Stay tuned. We'll be right back momentarily.
Before COVID, we were around 4 or 5 people.
It's a pretty tight-knit team that we have.
But now we are growing and we have about 14 people right now.
It's really 4 or 5 advisors and 4 or 5 support folks, plus an accountant, CPA.
What I'm trying to really create is the family place that everyone loves what they do and enjoys helping the client. My parents, when they had their own company with my father, everybody liked to work because he liked to take care of the people, he likes to help the people, and I'm trying to establish the same thing in our company.
It's very much a team, kind of family-like culture at our company. You know, we hang out outside of work. We care a lot about each other's personal lives as well.
Welcome back to Retire Smart Maryland. My name is Cynthia Defazio, and I'm joined by Prashant Sabapathi and Ozzy Culhagil of Elite Income Advisors. Wonderful show we're having today, talking about the 5 big retirement risks. We got through the first one, taxes. This next one, Ozzy, I'm guiding to you. Number 2 on the 5 big retirement risks, longevity. Why is that an issue?
That's an issue because back in the days when our grandparents and the parents, the longevity around that time, it's happened to be somewhere around the 65 to 75, then goes up. But like these days, if I'm not mistaken, we are running between age of 86 to 92. So what that means is we work about 30 to 40 years to get to the retirement. And back in the days, we were spending less time in retirement than working. Now we are spending more time in retirement than working.
That's interesting.
That is really interesting. I mean,
wow.
That's such a great point that you bring up.
Yes.
And we do a lot of work with like Anne Arundel County firefighters, Baltimore City Police. And what's really interesting is I think it must have been 3 or 4 years ago, we retired an Anne Arundel County firefighter. He was 48 years old when he retired. 48 years old. If that guy ends up living to be 91 or 85, he's going to spend more time in retirement than he actually did working. Now, good for him because he has a pension, so he's got income he can count on for the rest of his life. He's got a deferred compensation plan. A lot of law enforcement have that. And then they have also something called the DROP program, which is like our version of the 401k. So that's great for him. But the scary thing is, what if you don't have any of that stuff? What if you don't have a pension where you don't have reliable income every month? Well, now living to be 85, 90, 95 years old becomes a heck of a lot more scary when you don't have that income to fall back on.
Do you think some of the people, not having that, pensions, do you think they can create pensions?
So, it's a great question. I think the idea of creating your own income is becoming more and more prevalent, right? And that's simply because pensions have started to go away. I mean, my father worked in the hospital system for years, and he retired from the hospital system to start his own practice. But when he retired, he gets a pension every single month. Pension for the rest of his life. And when he passes away, pension for my mom's life, which is pretty sweet. And that's what he's gotten in all these years for the service that he provided. But those have started to go away. And to your point, there are ways out there today where you can actually take a percentage, because you never want to have all your eggs in any one basket, but you can take a percentage of your portfolio, believe it or not, and use it to fund your own pension plan. It's one of the most powerful things out there to help you create a reliable source of income that doesn't depend on the stock market. I mean, I'll tell you what, when you're retired, the last thing you want to be doing is looking at Yahoo Finance every day.
That's
saying,
true.
Is the Dow up today or is it down, right? Like, you should be enjoying life, not worrying about the market. So I'm glad you brought that up. There's ways that you can take a small part of your portfolio and use it to create an income for the rest of your lifetime.
That's fantastic. It really is. So obviously then living longer, you're also thinking about long-term care as well as part of the planning process with that?
Long-term care is a big part of it. I mean, you know, when you look at the cost of assisted living, just even in a place like Howard County where I grew up, you're talking about $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month for assisted livings, okay? And I know that my father's in the medical business, and he specializes in geriatrics. So he shares with me what his patients pay for assisted living care. You know, a lot of people know that my mother is in a home care situation where our family outputs $10,000 every month for mom's care. That's a lot of money, right?
That is a lot of money.
And so if that happens to you, what are you going to do? I think the number one thing that we hear is that our clients don't want to be a burden on anybody else.
Yeah.
Well, in order to not be a burden, you have to do that planning today. And another part of this, and this kind of leads to one of the other risks, which is inflation, which we can maybe talk about next, is when we think about long-term care planning, we have to think about what those costs are going to look like 10, 15, 20 years from now. Most of the people who are able to listen and watch our show don't need the long-term care today because they're in pretty good shape.
Right.
But what is it going to cost you 15 or 20 years down the road?
Yeah.
That's what we have to start to think about.
That is true. That is true. And I definitely want to get to inflation, but first I want to get to the death of a spouse, Prashant. That's number 3 in our 5 biggest risks.
Yeah, and you know, when we look at losing a loved one, you got to look at what the financial impact is. So a lot of times if you have a pension, you may be elected some kind of a survivor benefit on that pension, meaning let's say I was getting $6,000 a month in a pension and now I pass away. Is my spouse going to get all of it, some of it, or none of it, right? That has a huge impact on your retirement income. What about Social Security? What happens to Social Security when one spouse passes away?
When you say it like this, sometimes some people, when they come into our office, they really do think that they're going to collect both of the Social Security, which is not to be true.
Yeah.
What happens is when one of the spouse dies, the other spouse, if their benefit's higher, just keep their benefit, but they lose the spouse's benefit. Or if the spouse's is higher, they can collect spouse's benefit and they can lose theirs. But at the end, one of the income is going to go away.
That means if you're collecting, let's say we have spouse A, spouse B, one's collecting $30,000 a year in Social Security, the other one's collecting $25,000 a year in Social Security, and one of them dies, we immediately lose $25,000 of Social Security. That's over $2,000 a month.
The question is, did we plan for this? Like, you know, what is the plan? If we lose that $25,000, how are we going to be able to recoup that money? Because believe it or not, the expenses are not going down that much.
It's very true.
That's true. And so quickly, I'll just share a quick kind of case study that we've actually seen with our clients is we had somebody collecting a pension about $30,000 a year. He was also collecting Social Security about $30,000 a year. His wife was collecting Social Security about $20,000 a year. On his pension, he only elected a 1/2 survivor benefit. Now, this guy was a workaholic, okay? He worked into his 70s, and unfortunately, when he retired 3 months later, passed away, okay? Passed away, and what happened? The pension got cut in half, went from $30,000 a year down to $15,000. And then what happened is even though he was the one that passed away, she lost her Social Security, the $20,000, and took his. So think about that. Overnight, we had a loss of almost $3,000 a month. And guess what? She still has a mortgage. She still has to pay for health insurance. Now, there's some silver lining in this. Luckily, they'd done a really good job saving money. They had saved about $1.5 million. And we showed them a plan where we could use about 45% of that money and use it to make up that gap in the income when one of them passed away. We didn't know who would pass first, but we were pretty prepared when it happened. And so that is the saving grace. That is really why planning becomes so important. If you've never thought about these topics, if your advisor, maybe you're working with one of the big box retailers, if your advisor has never talked to you about longevity planning or what happens when one spouse passes away, this is a great opportunity for you to dive right into this conversation. The phone number is 833-308-5200. We have operators standing by ready to book your appointment with us at our Ellicott City offices. Again, 833-308-5200. It is totally 100% complimentary to come in to visit with us, which means you leave your checkbook at home, and there's no obligation to actually do any business. All you're doing is coming in and figuring out where you stand and whether or not you are on the right track to retire the way that you want to. This is what we call our Retire Smart roadmap process. The tools are there for you, folks, to be able to take advantage of. All you have to do is pick up the phone, give us a call, 833-308-5200, or you can scan the QR code or visit retiremaryland.com.
Prashant, thank you so much. Ozzy, thank you. To our viewers at home, that number to call is on your screen, 833-308-5200. We are talking about the 5 big retirement risks in today's show. We have 2 more to get through, so we're going to have to take a very short commercial break so we can get through the next 2. Again, 833-308-5200. We'll be right back on Retire Smart Maryland after this very short commercial break.
Do you have the answers to these 4 key retirement questions? How much should you save each year for retirement? How much do you need to have saved in order to retire? What will your retirement savings cover? How can you make your retirement savings last the rest of your life? We'll cover all of this and more by building you a complimentary retirement roadmap. Just visit retiremaryland.com today, and you'll also receive a complimentary copy of my book, Fiscal Health, Retirement Wealth.
Welcome back to Retire Smart Maryland. My name is Cynthia Defazio, and I'm joined today by Prashant Sabapathi and Ozzy Culhagil of Elite Income Advisors. Gentlemen, a great show we're having today, the 5 main retirement risks and what we can do to remedy those. This next one, Ozzy, I'm going to guide to you. Inflation, number 4 on the list. Wow. Why is that an issue?
It's an issue because if we will look at the inflation maybe 10, 12 years ago, we ran about like 8 years, if I'm not mistaken, with almost close to zero inflation. Yeah. And at the last several years, we see that inflation rate is spiking like 5, 6, 7, 8%. And when you look at what do you need today, if we give the example of $6,000, that what do we need
per
today?
Month, right?
Per month. Yep. Thank you. Per month, $6,000. And if you count the inflation by the 6%, and 12 years later, our need is going to be $12,000 a month. Today,
wow.
6. In 12 years, 12,000. So
wow.
when you do your planning, however you do your planning, are you counting inflation with your planning? I think that's the most important question that, the viewers need to ask their financial advisor.
I think it's a great point. Excellent point. And then the other part of that, what I would say is, how do we actually proactively address it, right? Like, it's easy for us to say, does your plan account for inflation? But what does that actually mean?
True.
To us, it means, does your income actually rise in retirement? And is the rise linked to the stock market going up? Or is the rise an actual guaranteed rise in your income? Like, a lot of times we see people with federal pensions, and thank goodness they get a cost of living adjustment. But I'll tell you what, we've seen a lot of people that work for defense contractors and communications companies, and those are private pensions, or the airlines, right? And they get a pension, but it doesn't increase every year.
They don't have a cost of living.
Exactly, they don't have a cost of living. So what is that pension actually going to be worth 10 years, 15, 20 years from now when your expenses double? And they're going to double not because you're spending more, but just because costs have gone up, right?
Sure.
So does your income increase in retirement? You have to be able to answer that question with certainty.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen. Prashant, what about this next one, the final one, number 5 on the list, market risk? Wow, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and look, after a year like 2022, we saw unprecedented time in the market, things that happened in the market. We saw stocks do really poorly in 2022, but I think the really interesting thing is we also saw bonds do really poorly. And so most of the time, how people mitigate risk in their portfolio is by using bonds. Well, the issue is last year, 2022, was a year where stocks did pretty poorly. Even bonds did really poorly for the year. And so that creates a challenge. It creates a challenge in how to structure your retirement portfolio. I'll tell you what, if you had $1 million, the biggest thing is when you lose $200,000 or $300,000, you now still need income in retirement. If you're counting on that $1 million to generate $30,000 or $40,000 a year, it's not too bad taking $30,000 or $40,000 a year if you have $1 million. But it's a heck of a lot harder to take $30,000 or $40,000 if you only have $700,000 or $600,000. And so that is the biggest thing. Is I always talk about how do we use our money to create time, right? And the reason I say that is because I'm a big believer in the United States stock market. I am, but I'm a big believer in it over time. In any 1 year, in any 12-month or 18-month period of time, my guess is as good as yours as to what's going to happen. And if it goes down, are you willing to subject the health and the success of your retirement on a stock market that trades in an incredibly volatile way? I think that's how we have to start to think about it, is how do I use my money to buy myself time so that I can recover through the bad markets?
It's amazing, gentlemen, when you think about it, because obviously today's show, the 5 main retirement risks, we could actually spend hours talking about these topics because they're so important for people that are entering their retirement years. Ozzy, what final piece of advice would you have to our viewers at home that are thinking about picking up the phone and calling in, but they're not sure?
If you're not sure, all I can ask is just look at your budget. And based on your budget, how much do you need today? And is your plan allowing you to calculate the inflation? And in the future, are you going to have enough money? Is your plan looking at the whole picture, the taxes, the inflation, the market risk, longevity? And all this are the risks that the retirees are going to face. Maybe not today, but
at some point.
At some point, they're going to face these risks.
So, Prashant, everyone needs a plan.
Everybody needs a plan. And to piggyback on that, the one thing that I think everybody should do is they should start today. Okay, let's start today on this. It just takes that very first step is the hardest step to take. And I think what you will find is when you come in to visit with us, you've now taken that first step. And now we're going to be able to help you put together that written retirement plan. It's called the Retire Smart Roadmap. It's going to include helping you with Social Security optimization, looking at an income for life plan to make sure that you have a rising income in retirement that you can count on. We'll talk about a retirement portfolio stress test. And yes, we will talk about taxes and how the threat of increasing taxes may impact your retirement. Starts with that phone call, 833-308-5200, or you can visit retiremaryland.com.
Prashant, thank you so much. Ozzy, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, most specifically, thank you for spending time with us today on Retire Smart Maryland. Be safe, be happy, be blessed. We'll see you back 1 week from today.